Hello, students. If you are watching this, then I am guessing you want to do a retake of your DNA fingerprinting assessment that we did. Was task 7, I believe, for last week's folder, depending when you're watching this. So I want to give you some tips and tricks that may give you one last, like maybe will help it click with the DNA profiling here or the fingerprints. So really we have two different kinds of problems that we'll solve. One will be if you're solving a crime and you have some DNA evidence that was left behind, identifying which suspect should be called in for questioning and see if they have a good alibi. And so an alibi is a good reason, or where were you at the time of the crime, or why were you at the crime scene? Maybe you were actually, maybe it was a store and you just happened to be there and you left some DNA behind, but you've got a good alibi. So those I don't want to talk about I'm not going to talk about a whole lot, because if you just think about, you are just making sure which of the bands, which of those DNA bands match up with the suspect that you're calling into question. And so probably right away you probably identify quickly that it's suspect number 2 that is the guilty party, or at least that you need to call in for some questioning. That doesn't prove guilt exactly, but it puts the person at the crime scene at least. So those are pretty straightforward. The ones that probably are giving you a harder time perhaps are the paternity ones. So we must always remember, so this DNA, you inherit half your DNA from mom and half from dad. So you're going to be a mixture of your mother and father's DNA. So when we're deciding if one of the fathers, a suspected fathers, fathered the child, we have to account for every single one of the bands that the child has. But we also have to account for the bands that they don't have. So what I mean by that is, so if we take this first band, and so I've got that just underneath, let's look at mother and let's look at dad 1. Both of them have that band, have that genetic band. So because both mom and dad have that, they're going to pass that on. At least for our purposes, we're going to say that they pass that on. And so because the child does not have that band, dad number 1, we can rule him out of fathering this child. So let's move down a little bit further and look at this band. So this child has the band. Did it come from mom? It did not. Therefore, it had to come from one of the fathers. So we look at dad 2 and dad 3, who are still our possible fathers, and both of them have the band. So does that help us figure out whom the father is? It does not. Let's move down to the next band. So this band that's just above my line, mom had. So that doesn't help us. And really when you're looking at these, if the child and the mother both have the band, it doesn't matter what the father is, because he doesn't have to have that band for the child to have the band. All right, let's go down to this next one. So just above my line now, mom has it, child doesn't have it, but look at dad number 2. He has the band as well. So he would have passed that on. For our purposes, we say he would have passed that on to his children. So we're going to rule him out of being the father in this case. Okay, so now number 3 is our only suspected father that's still possible, if any of these are fathers. I'm going to come down to this next band. So does this band help me? And it doesn't, because the mother has the band. Let's look at this next one. Now this one helps me because mom doesn't have it. Does dad number 3 have it? He sure does. So he's still a possible father. This next one, child has it, mom doesn't. That's a good one to help us. And dad number 2 has the band. Now finally, of this child has the band, mom does, so it doesn't actually help us. So with all the information we have here, dad 3 is a high chance of being the actual father of this child. Okay, so hopefully that helped a little bit with thinking about a couple of things, especially what often trip people up are looking for a band the mom has, the child doesn't have, and this because this dad number 1 had the band, couldn't be the father for our purposes. Okay, all right, let's look at this next one. So let me grab my tool here. Let me bring the line down. Now I will tell you that on the assessment, when you take the assessment, if you're doing the retake, over on the right-hand side of your document, there's a little icon that looks like a ruler. If you click on that, It actually gives you a ruler to drag around in the assessment. So let's look at this one. So this mother has this, and this male has it. He's already ruled out. Why is he ruled out? Because the child doesn't have the band. Okay, so let's come down to this next one. Does this band help us? Doesn't, because mom has it. Okay, so we're really looking for bands that the child has that mom doesn't. Does this band help us? Nope. Does this band help us? Well, it helps support that male number one could be the father. So let's come down a little further. Now here's another example where the mom has the band, male two has the band, but the child doesn't. So he's still ruled out. We've already ruled out number one. Does this band help support male number one being the father? It does. This one doesn't help us because mom has it. Now, does this band, like the child doesn't have it, does that support or disprove he's not? Does it prove that he's not the father? It doesn't, because mom didn't have the band. So you can almost inherit that non-band from one of the parents as well. The child has this band, so the child and mother, so that doesn't help us. But we get down to this band, helps us figure out male number one. Male number one, male number one is the likely father. Okay? Now, this last one, let me actually grab my line tool here and come down here. And so I want you to look at this and decide whether or not you feel this is a possible father. Could he have fathered, this child? So I'm going to give you a moment. Do the Jeopardy thing. No, I won't do that. And look through every one of the bands and see if it follows those rules that we've talked about. Is this the father? If you think that you have the answer, or if you don't have the answer, then hit pause now because I'm about to give you the answer. I believe this could not be the father. And the reason being, all the way down here, this band right here that I'm going through. Mother has it, father has it, child should have it. Okay, so that's what we're following for these. So I don't think this could be the father. Hopefully that helps you with determining paternity. For the ones I give you, we're going to presume the mom is the mom, okay, unless you're told otherwise. All right, now, I'm going to look at this scenario here. Now, we have to also remember that every one of these represents a gene, and we can sometimes find markers for disease. And this is actually used quite a lot for cancers, people who are predisposed to cancers. There can be markers that make you have a higher chance of having certain cancers. And those markers are really important because we could run that test on anyone's DNA blood test and see if they have that marker. And if they have that marker, and that marker gives you a better chance of having cancer, then that person is a higher risk. So in this scenario, what I'm telling you is that, this person along the left-hand side has a disease called schoolitis. Makes you allergic to school. Obviously, it's fictitious. Saying 30% of the population has this rare genetic disorder. Now, so this is the fingerprint, the DNA fingerprint profile of a person with the disease. We don't know which of those genes gives you the disease, though, but let's suppose we know it's one of these bands, one of these genes, so to speak. We are also told that 3 of these individuals across here have the disease. We're asked to figure out, 1, which gene is it, and which 3 people have the disease. So with that being said, let me grab my tool here again that lets me grab my line. So I'm going to put this line right underneath, and let me actually make that different color so it stands out a little bit. Let me pick, how about that red? Does that red stand out a little bit better to you? Okay, make it a little wider. So could it be this band that's causing the disease? And the answer is no. Why? Because more than 3 people have that gene. Now let's move down to the next marker that the person with schoolitis has. Could it be this marker? It isn't, because again, more than 3 people have that band. Down to this one. Close. 1, 2, 3, 4 people have it. So it was close. It was close, but it's not that marker. Definitely not this marker because everyone has that marker. And that is true for some people that we might all have the same marker. That's why we run large sets of DNA. How about this marker? Could it be this marker? How many people have this marker? One, two, three. Ooh, we are told that three people have it. So this is in the running. Let's keep that in mind. Let's make sure it's none of the other markers. Is it this one? Nope. Is it this marker? In fact, this marker, nobody has this in the sample. So this is a unique marker. So let's suppose this was for another disease. None of these people would have the disease. And then finally, the bottom marker, lots of people have it. So that being said, it was definitely this gene. So Brandon, it was a Brandon, Brandon, Ginny, and Ingrid all have this disease. Or at least they test for the gene, for the marker. Now, lastly, let me talk about what the number of bands like having in common might mean. We can actually use those to determine the relatedness. So let's look at Alexis and Brandon. And let's say how many markers do they have in common? They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 markers in common. Now, I don't know how closely related that makes them. They're definitely not identical twins, those that have the same. But let's compare Brandon to Damien. So let's see which one. So Brandon and Damien. So they don't have that one. Here's one. Brandon and Damien, 2, 3, and that's it. So they had 3 markers. So let me do this. So we could say Brandon and Charlie. Oops, that was wrong. Way to go, Mr. Eckert. We said Brandon and Damien had 3 in common. Brandon and Alexis had 5 in common. Now, if I say compare Alexis and Brandon and Damien, who's close related? It would be Alexis and Brandon would be closer related because they have more markers in common. And that was like in the Guppy gizmo or Guppy video you watched where the mother had 2 bands in common with the fish. So she was most likely the mom. So hopefully that will help you like as you answer a couple of the questions that were on that activity. So you can now see your score. Now I'm not going to open it up because it's going to be a similar, in fact, it's the same assignment. And so hopefully at this point, go back through. You don't necessarily know which ones you got wrong. That does help with test security, but you are allowed to make that second attempt, and I will take the higher of the attempts. So in order for you to be able to take it, it says that you must put in the I'm just trusting you that you've watched this video. If you take the assignment and you don't necessarily do any better, it's because you didn't watch my video. So hopefully you found this helpful and that you will do better this second time. All right, so you have now permission to go back and take that second attempt. So what I would ask you to do is that send me an email real quickly that you have watched the video, and then I held up 3 fingers. So you must, in your email, say that Mr. Eckert held up 3 fingers, okay? And then you're allowed to take the test again. If you don't do that, you can't take the quiz again, or at least I won't count it. So, all right, I'm trusting you not to tell your peers about this. All right, so remember, send me an email that says Mr. Eckert was holding up 3 fingers. All right, have at it. Talk to you next time.